panel, we are going to discuss cooking the book. And I have the honor to introduce to you our three panelists for today. We have Chef Jean Gonzales. He is the president of Cafe Isabel and the Center for Asian Culinary Studies. He is one of the prominent figures in the Philippine culinary scene, and he has also received several awards for his valuable contribution to Philippine cuisine, among them the 10 Outstanding Young Men Award for Culinary Arts, the Jerry Rojas Foundation for Excellence, and the Hotel and Restaurant Association's Flat Door for his excellence and dedication to culinary arts. Chef Jean was also the first Filipino culinary educator to include Philippine cuisine as a subject in the professional culinary school curriculum. The World Gourmet Summit recently awarded him as one of the top chefs of Asia in 2017. In preserving traditional Philippine recipes and encouraging Filipinos to appreciate their everyday recipes, Chef Jean has authored Cocina Sulipena, Culinary Gems from Pampanga, and Anvil Publishing best-selling little books, or the Pinoy Classic Cuisine series, that won him a special citation from the Manila Critics Circle in 2001. His three books, Going East, Tropical Cocktails, Exciting Bar Drinks for the Beach Party Scene, and Philippine Breads have won World Gourmand Awards. Our next panelist is Chef Xavier Btesh. After graduating with a degree in classic literature and philosophy at the age of 19, he started working in the restaurant owned by his mother's family. And he learned the skills of cooking with renowned chefs, such as Pierre Mochiso and Ferman Arambide for the next 10 years. He then went back to live in Saint-Tropez when he, forgive me for my French, yes, in Saint-Tropez, where he worked as a consultant chef for hotels, restaurants, special events, and private clients. In 2005, he started appearing as the food specialist for France's #1 network TF1 and released his cookbook, Le Petit Dîner de Xavier, which sold more than 40,000 copies in Europe. After a year promoting this book, Xavier went back to a more anonymous and behind-the-scenes life, offering his expertise to clients from Europe to USA and Morocco, including personalities and brands such as P. Diddy, Ivana Trump, Her Royal Highness Anne de Bourbon-Sicile, Christian Dior, Escada, Moet Chandon, and His Royal Highness Prince Andrew, Duke of York. In 2012, he settled down in the Philippines where he fell in love with the people, the place, and of course, food. And our third panelist is Miss Stephanie Zubiri-Crespi. Miss Stephanie is a food, lifestyle, and travel journalist. She has an active online and social media presence. Her column in the Philippine Star, Feast with Me, also the same title of her new book, has been running now for more than 6 years. She is also a regular contributing writer for Travel Plus Leisure Southeast Asia, as well as other regional and international publications. She is also the author of the 135 Guide of Conrad Hotels for Manila. Stephanie hosts 2 TV shows. One is Modern Living TV, which is airing on ANC. It's currently on its 8th season and is the longest continually running lifestyle show on Philippine TV. And another is Let's Eat. It's set to air on the Lifestyle Network at the end of September. She loves wine and is certified level 3 in Wine and Spirit Education Trust. A mother of 2, she believes in encouraging more people to cook at home and celebrate with every meal. She graduated with a license in History and Geography and a Master's in Geography from the University of Paris in Sorbonne. She graduated from a summer program in London School of Economics, as well as Basic Cuisine from the Cordon Bleu in Paris. She is fluent in French and also conversational in Spanish and German. Talk about being multilingual. Now we present to you our three panelists, and we start our session with Chef Jean.
Ooh. Well, being labeled as the prince of cheap books, as you can see, there's quite a marked difference between my books and their books. And sometimes I get to be jealous because I'm already in a certain market. My name is already niche to a certain market. You know, you can have a niche of Giorgio Armani, or you can have bench. I'm bench. And well, in doing a cookbook, basically, oh no, I think I lost my reference. All right, there it goes. Well, writing a cookbook is basically sharing, all about sharing. We as people who write cookbooks are the people that can share, because there are people who do not want to share recipes. They want to keep it, and this happened to my people in my hometown. I wrote a book called Cocina Sulipena, where I gathered from people close their old treasured family recipes plus our family recipes. But many of the recipes have died because the people who passed took it with them. They took it down their graves, and I was I would say it is very difficult because in reaching out to people who want to learn a dish, even if it was a cookbook, one of the hardest things to share is a recipe, especially treasured family recipes. Within the realm of my first book, I had to ask permission from people, from family, from friends, if I could share this to the public, and I put it down and I put it all in a book. I realized this when an old man had me called, and a descendant of a historically known chef who won one of the first Philippine awards, Juan Padilla. His son, who was very aging at that time, had me called, and he had the ovens heated, and I spent the whole day with him making bread, and he passed on the recipes to me. I don't know why, but it certainly got documented, and he did not want to keep the recipes in his family alone, because he knew that there would be some sort of secretive a secretive ring that would go around his recipes, and he really wanted to share it. A cookbook is written as a phase in your life that marks an interest you wish to share. I would say every cookbook, if you take a look at our two other panelists, these are markers, and they mark a certain stage in life. The stage in life becomes your bond between the buyer or the person who wishes to try the recipes out. Because this is what will make them seek and look at the book, where they will always judge it by its cover. always. And then once they pull out the book, they look through it, and there is the decision to purchase the book. Like I said, you have to occupy a certain niche, writing a cookbook. What particular niche do you really want to occupy? The very first time I went to Anvil, I shifted. After I wrote Cocina de Sulipena, I went to Anvil. And I thought that they would be able to publish my little book series. And I had visions of, the very type of Singapore, Thailand publishing, beautiful colored pictures and all that. When they came out with my book, I said, how many pieces did you print of this? And they said 5,000 of each. I said, why like this? There are no pretty pictures inside. It's just all recipes, and it's of course some excerpts of what I wrote. And I think it was Annie who said, what is it that you want? Do you want the recipes? Do you want people to buy the book because they want pretty pictures? Or do you want to reach out and put the recipes into the kitchens of the people who are buying the book? And I said, of course I want to spread this out, but not this ugly. but it was an inexpensive book, and people started buying it. There were no modern Filipino books with modern recipes, that it became the Bible of HRM students, because it was what? It came out at 90 pesos per book. And up to now, we're still trying to keep the below 100 peso mark, and the book has sold very well. They even took my picture because I bought a car.
Out of the royalties of his book.
Yeah. So, this is what you have to empathize. I think the big word for me is to empathize with the people who will buy the book. Whether it's a book that's very classy, or a book that really is for the mass-based buyer, you have to empathize. You have to know. You can't dilly-dally. And of course, one of the things that you must believe in are the people who know the business in selling the book. So, I've always left it up to Anvil. So again, they came out with 2 other cheap books. Another book done in, look at the quality of paper. But this is not because it's Anvil's fault. The quality of paper is only proportionate to the people who buy it. We came out with a white paper edition, and guess what the poor students did? They Xeroxed. They had this scanned and they Xeroxed it because it was cheaper. So, in order for them not to Xerox it anymore, we came out with brown paper. And this is what came out. But it's being used all over. It's being used by high school home management classes. It's being used by the first level classes. And eventually, I'm going to be converting this book and creating an NC2 or a TESDA government book. It's not enough to be able to write a cookbook or even the recipes you like. Like I said, empathize. Writing a cookbook requires a lot of empathizing with your prospective buyers. You must be able to know their needs and their wants. You must be able to know their budgets. Writing a cookbook, or a successful selling one, requires your understanding and consideration of what you can do better than the rest, based on the people who buy your book. You can't be better than the rest if you don't know. And you can't invade their markets because you're not for that market. Yeah, with regard to the book that you are writing. It would also know what the foodies would want to eat and not do the egotistical approach of possibly just publishing the recipe because you want to. There must be some semblance of a bond that you're going to have with the person who's going to be using your book. The responsibility of writing a cookbook lies in the effectivity and usability of the recipes. Thus, kitchen testing the recipes is of prime importance. You have to give a book. It's your responsibility as writer of the cookbook to be able to give a book that has kitchen-tested recipes that will not fail the person who bought the book. Social media is very, how would you call it? Social media can be very cruel because once they post it and they say that your book is terrible, it's there for life. No one's going to erase it. Writing a cookbook is not only a bunch of systematized or tested recipes. It must tell a story to the person who bought it and to the person cooking the recipe. There has to be a bridge of significance between author and person cooking the recipe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chef G. To sum up what he has shared with us, he said that recipes are meant to be shared. That is why we are publishing cookbooks. This is why cooks, chefs, and other people passionate about food and drink create cookbooks. It's because recipes are not meant to be hidden just under your bed or everywhere else. Recipes are meant to be shared to other people. And it's also important to empathize with whoever is going to buy and read and try the recipes in the cookbook. And each recipe in a cookbook must tell a story which is of significance to the buyers and the readers that a cookbook writer is trying to reach. Thank you very much, Chef Jean, for the very insightful lecture. Now we will proceed to our next panelist, Chef Xavier Btesh.
Good afternoon again. So, I join you on many points, Chef, except that I would say there is no cheap book. It might be less expensive, but there is not such a thing to me as a cheap book. And I'm sure your books will last much longer than my pension years. So, I'm, of course, with Anvil as well, and I'm very lucky for that. So this book, the idea of this book, I'm not known in the Philippines like Chef or like Stephanie that I've known for a long time, and with whom I love talking French. And the idea came, the first idea of the book came, I was training a lady who works in the French embassy. I trained her for 5 weeks. And she was taking notes and learning every day different recipes of French food that I would make easy for her. And I remember once going to the residence of the French embassy, and I talked to another cook that I would know from before, from the previous ambassador. And she told me, you know, she's not sharing with us. She doesn't share recipes. She's got a notebook. And when she's making one of your recipes that she learned with you, she wants us out of the kitchen. So I talked to this lady and I told her, listen, if you want to go on with the training with me, you have to share. Because food is about sharing, recipes is about sharing, and if you have any knowledge in anything and you don't share it, then the value of your knowledge is absolutely zero. It's useless. What are you going to do? Die with it? Useless. Share your knowledge. So it started like this, and then of course it was quite tricky for me to come out and say I want to do a book because nobody knows me here in the Philippines. So the idea was, and that's where I really joined you, the idea was to introduce myself, my story, within my food, So I truly, truly, truly believe, and that's what I wrote in this book, that recipes are family legacy. And I was able to tell my story to the Filipino through this book, through my recipes. None of my parents, grandparents, great-grandparents were born in the same country, were born in the same continent. I have Italian, I have Syrian, I have French, I have English blood, I'm Jew. So it's all these mixes that makes my cuisine, right? And I have cousins living in Morocco, where I worked as well. So it's really a legacy that I wanted. I wanted to tell my story. So, of course, most of my family are based around France and the Mediterranean Sea. So the idea was to do a book that would tell my story through my cooking. And I really join you, Chef. I really feel that that's the best legacy you can have. We all of the chefs, no matter where we work, no matter how many stars we have, no matter if we're famous, unfamous, who we are and the quality of the restaurants we're working, we all started with our grandmother. We all started in the kitchen as kids, learning the recipes of our ancestors. My grandmother was half Syrian, half English, but as an English lady, she never knew where was the kitchen in her house. And finally, when she married, my grandfather said, who was half Syrian, half Iraqi, said, you know, if you want to marry me, I want you to know the Syrian dishes, the basics. So she went to a school in Aleppo to learn food, to learn how to cook. And for many years, she would come once a year, twice a year actually, for Christmas and for a celebration, Jew celebration that we call Yom Kippur. And she would do Syrian food. And I would be that little boy in the kitchen, staying with her, watching her, learning with her. When she passed away, I was in my 20s. For the 27 following years, till my father passed 2 years ago, every year for Christmas and every year for Yom Kippur, a celebration, I would do the Syrian recipes for him. And each time he would say, oh my God, this reminds me of my childhood, this reminds me of my mother. And so pass it on. I don't have kids, but I have a nephew, he's 15 years old. And I cook with him. And each time I go to France, I cook with him. And I pass on those Syrian recipes. Because I hope truly that one day he's going to do them for the rest of the family. Because it's actually, it's not the money that you're going to get from your parents. It's not, nothing of that. It's not the materialistic stuff. It's basically, it's the legacies, their values. And food is a value. The way you treat people with food is a real value. The way you treat your guests, the way you cook for your family, it's a mark of respect. Give me bad food, and I know you don't respect me. I don't mean, you know, I sometimes want to cook for my friends, and it's a total disaster because, hey, you know, I can burn something or I can go wrong in the recipe. It happens. But still do it with love, because the love you put in your food is the respect. So that's what I wanted to do with this book. And other than this, when I did this book, I had a very typical Filipino condo kitchen, where I could do, you know, I could be on the burner, one hand in the ref, and literally, you know, do everything in that small. And I thought, if I do a book, I'm not going to do it for the people who have 5 yayas, huge kitchen where I work. I work in kitchens with aircon and 12 burners, and they say, oh, that's only the small kitchen. And I thought, okay, that's not my goal. If I want to share, I want to share with people living in condos. I want to share with students. I want to share with couples or family, no matter what the size of your kitchen. And actually, one of my best rewards after writing the book was somebody told me, oh, I went to work in some of my clients because I do a lot of private function, private dinners. And I told the host, I said, you have my book? And she goes, oh, I'm such a shame, it's in the kitchen with the yaya. And I said, that's where it's meant to be. I don't want a coffee table book, you know, I want people to use my book. And another friend said, asked me to sign the book, and he used it already, and there were like some spot of food on it. And I said, well, that's the best, right? That's what it's meant to be. So when you do a book, I think you really, as Chef said, you have to think, who am I going to give this book to? Well, who is going to read it? Who is going to buy it? So when I met Anvil, they offered me to do same kind of book. Actually, luckily, I brought in partners, sponsors that gave me a bit of money. But at the end, no matter the color of the paper, no matter our sponsors, our celebrity, what you do is you do it with your heart. And I think you really have to start by telling your story through your recipes. I think that's really going to make a difference. If you, truly enough, if you do a cooking book, this is French cuisine, not because I know French cuisine. This is what I've learned. So there are Syrian recipes, of course, and Italian, because it's the story of my family. But I know, these are recipes that I know. I'm not going to do a book about Spanish food, because I don't know Spanish food. And that would be like tricky first, and that will be not very honest from me. So when we started working with Anvil, there was that part to introduce me, and it was finally so easy to introduce myself through the story of my family and where I come from, where I've worked, through my recipes. So I was very blessed, but I think that I would still be very proud to have with no picture, and as long as you do it with your heart and with feelings, and of course Annie and Anvil were very, very supportive, because I was like, I did the first book in France. We sold 40,000 copies because I was pushed by a TV network. 40,000 copies. I remember I told Anvil, how many are we going to print here in the Philippines? He said, start with 1,000. And he said, already if you sell 2,000, it's a hit. And I was like, okay. When I sold 40,000 in Europe, my publisher was like, we don't know if we're going to do a second one because you didn't sell much. 40,000 copy was not much. And I think now you can get it for €2 on Amazon. So the leftovers. So I had to learn, and I was telling earlier to Stephanie, the first book I did in France, I would write the recipes, send the recipes to my publisher and to my editor, and they had the stylist doing the pictures, they had the food, and then there was that famous photographer who took more money per books that I did actually, and then he would send me the picture, say, you want this one or this one? I would say, I want this one. They would say, no, we'll take this one. So I didn't do anything. The good thing with this baby is that it brought me back to really giving birth to something, because I did the food that you see in the pictures, I did it myself. We worked with a stylist. We have a second one coming where I did the recipes again. And finally, I feel I own this book maybe more than the one that sold 40,000 copies in Europe, because I did it really from scratch. I did it with my heart. It's dedicated to the Filipino people. Of course, to a few of my friends, but basically the main dedication is to the Filipino people, because I felt really, really so welcome here. And I wanted also to do this book because there's always a message in the book. And not only a legacy, but a message. And my message with this book was to tell the people, hey, okay, I'm a French chef, but don't think that what you see in the TV shows, don't think the people you see in the magazine, the 2-star chef, whatsoever. This is not the French food. This is what you see when you see Alain Ducasse, when you see these guys. They're like the haute couture. But who can afford haute couture? I mean, we don't walk around, even if you can afford haute couture, you don't hang out in your house all day long wearing your Versace, right? So food is the same. We have haute couture, we have star chef, we have beautiful food in France, but on daily basis, we have our comfort food, we have our easy food, and that's what it's about. It's about everybody can cook French without going to Santis, without using truffle, foie gras, or whatsoever. And to finish, I have 3 minutes, I will tell you a little story. We have a lot of stews in France. And one in the south of France, where I was raised, mostly in Saint-Tropez, we have one that we call daube de bœuf, beef daube. The original name of daube is adobo.
Yeah.
It's adobo. And when you want to know more about a recipe, think of the geography of the country. In France, we do our stews with red wine because we have the wine. Here you have the rice vinegar because you have rice, right? And you have this rice vinegar. Adobo or daube are the same, except that we use our wine and you use your rice vinegar. So basically, you can do French in your little kitchen or your big kitchen because we blend together somehow. It's just a matter of what we have to cook, but we're not so far the ones from the others. And just enjoy my book. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chef Xavier. Again, recipes are meant to be shared to everybody. Is important, and of course, no matter how your status is as a cook, whether you're just cooking at home, whether you are a professional chef or a culinary student, we all start with the kitchen. We all start learning cooking and preparing food for the people that we love at home. And we cannot emphasize more doing things with love. So thank you so much for that enlightening lecture. And we will proceed with our third panelist, Ms. Stephanie Zubiri-Crespi.
Hi, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to stand up because I feel like I'm under interview, high pressure sitting down. I move a lot. First of all, you know, I am so honored and humbled to be here next to Chef Jean, who is not only like a professional, and that's why his cheap books sell, is because he has credibility. I'm a no one. I'm a stay at home. I gotta razzle dazzle with pictures. So, but I mean, it's really great to be able to, you know, live up to just content. And it's funny because, you know, the first quote they gave me for my book was like, I really don't want to give up the photos of this. It's like, well, as of now, it's going to cost 4,500 pesos. I'm like, what? Forget it. But in the end, we worked it out. We found sponsors, and I kept trying to push the price lower. They said, this is the price of your book, and you have to trust us that people will buy it at that price. It's thick, it's colorful. You know, it's $8.95. I guess it's fair. I've said, please lower. But anyway, so I'm going to tell you a little story about my book. I can't talk about my book without talking about my column, because it's the same name as my column. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So Feast with Me is my column in Philippine Star since 2009. I used to write food articles, restaurant reviews, travel. And when I was approached by Tita Milad, I had to write a column. I had to think long and hard. Why, right? So, next slide, please. So, Feast with Me comes from Babette's Feast. Does anyone know this movie, right? I love Babette's Feast. I was so inspired. And it's particularly this one scene, okay, where she finally prepares this feast. If you haven't watched it, please watch it. Basically, this lady comes home, she cooks a feast for her hometown, and her hometown is very Puritan. They're not allowed to have any pleasure at all, like no salt, no nothing. They just eat to survive. And she's trying to show them this, all she wanted, because she helped someone out and say that, she's like, what can we do to repay you? She's like, please allow me to cook for you. So she cooks this beautiful feast. And this old lady here, who has never tried anything good in her life, okay, all she's been eating is boiled potatoes and boiled soup. And she takes a bite, and she takes a sip of wine, and she goes, and then she forces herself to, like this. It's this particular scene, she tastes the wine, and it was just so amazing. She never tried wine before. She never had foie gras before. It was this moment where she just went, and then she quickly forced herself, I'm not supposed to enjoy this. And it was a really great moment. And, you know, for me, my column, and inherently my book, was about those moments, right? It was about those moments around the table that are so universally good, that even if you've never tried it before, even if you don't know what foie gras is or what that Grand Cru wine was or whatever, it was so good because of the moment, because of the mixture, that particular moment. So it's the ultimate celebration of life for me when a basic necessity such as food with a combination of wine and more importantly good company, right, transcends the essence of survival, that eating for survival, and in turn nourishes both your body and soul. So this is what my column was about, and I guess what my book is about. So MFK Fisher is one of my favorite food writers. Sharing food with another human being is an intimate act that should not be indulged in lightly. Next slide, please. So this is how I felt when I wrote my book. You know, there was no way I could share my recipes without sharing the stories behind them, the adventures I went through to eat them, those memories. It's not wine, it's words. Okay, next slide please. I spent all my childhood devouring novels, writing short stories. I left for France actually to be a starving writer. I was like, Dad, I don't want to go to university. I'm going to write like Hemingway. He's like, you're going to college. I wanted to make this great novella, and I had to find a way to reconcile both, because ultimately I made my name here, first in the food industry, then lifestyle, and had to find a way to write about both. And that's when I started my blog in 2015. So my blog offered me an outlet where I could write both, basically document all my recipes, and at the same time write about other things that I wanted to write about. And this was really life-saving in the process of my book. And so when people ask me how long did it take, I said, well, I really don't know, because it took me 2 years to the finished product. But when I started this, I had in mind, well, if I'm going to shoot my recipes, might as well shoot them professionally. So I shot them all with the same photographer. I styled them all myself, and eventually a certain style came out and certain themes came out. So it was like I was already preparing for a book. So at least I didn't have to sit down and frenetically shoot everything. And this was really life-saving, keeping costs at bay. You know, it allowed me to do 1 shoot day a month, and you know, it didn't really cost much. Some of the recipes were sponsored at the time for sponsored blog posts. So there was no pressure. It was just a lot of fun. And then finally, Tita Malad said, Steph, you need to write your book, right? Now's the time. Star is working with Anvil. I need a book next year. I'm like, ooh, okay. So I sifted through my stuff, right? Next page. And then I noticed that, you know, without really thinking about it, there was a trend. So there were trends. What kind of food did I like to cook? What kind of food did I like to eat? And most of the trends were, you know, very global. A lot of fresh herbs, a lot of spices. I actually like exotic food, with really anything to do with fresh herbs, fresh spices, and all that. And then also Mediterranean, because it was very familiar to me. And the other thing was, next page, so I also wanted to go beyond just cooking. I'm not a professional chef, yeah, everyone likes to call me chef, but I'm really not. I'm a cucinera. I don't know how I survived in the food industry for 5 years, but just, you know, hard work. But ultimately, I'm a home cook, and all my recipes are geared to the home cook. And all my recipes are food I like to eat. And when I invite people at home, it's beyond just the food, right? For me, it was also about the table settings. So these are all photos that are in the book. Table settings, the wine that you would serve, who was coming to dinner, and what would you serve them? You know, you're not going to serve your really fancy wine to people who drink beer, right? You also wanted to adapt the place setting. So Filipinos here at home, when they entertain at home, if it's a big party, they love to do these round tables of 8 and 10. And I mean, your house is not a restaurant, right? Your house is your home, and people want to feel relaxed and comfortable. So I also wanted to give those entertaining tips, you know, that you don't need to be seated at the table. I mean, most often than not, if we're more than 10, which is what my table fits, I'll offer a different kind of menu that's adapted so people can move around. They can sit at the coffee table, they can stand up. So, you know, it's really a question of how do you want to receive people, what's the occasion, and what are the themes. I'm not a fan of mishmashed buffets. It's very typical here. You have a lasagna, the adobo, the chocolate cake, the lumpia, and then like curry, and then you eat it all in one go, right? Personally, I would rather have all the flavors come together. So this was kind of like these underlying themes that came out. Next. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Wine pairing was also really important to me. Sorry. Before that, and I also had to think of something that would make my book different. Right. Let's go back. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. And I want to acknowledge Chef Jean because he is the first one to really write about food and wine pairing. It's a guide for chefs and restaurateurs. This one, I really wanted it for people who don't even know about wine. So people who aren't in the industry, people who just want to appreciate wine, try something new, they're confused, when am I going to buy it? But then that's why I really pursued my WSET studies. I said I might as well get some kind of certification if I'm going to write about wine, mostly because I like to drink wine. And it's, for me, it was something that was very important because people are interested in it now, and it doesn't have to be very luxurious. You have really great options in the market that aren't expensive. So that's something I wanted to really put out there. Okay. And I wanted people to enjoy wine like, how the Europeans do, right? So anyway, when I got all of those elements together, I had that underlying theme, which was, global home cooking. And many of my recipes were inspired by holidays, right? And when I had that, my holidays, types of cuisine, culture, and all my vacations or trips. And when I had that, I started with a table of contents. What were the recipes that I had already? And what would I like to write about? And the places I visit. So if you look here, that's the original table of contents. It's like a mess, right? And then this is kind of like the pared back, the table of contents. Eventually, I edited things down. I had to cut, as I wrote it, I ended up cutting actually 2 whole chapters and, shifting things around. I started with, next slide please. So I actually wrote backwards. So the people of Anvil were like, this is new. I'm like, yeah, okay, so I'm gonna write 1 chapter and we're gonna lay it out and then I'll write the next chapter, okay? They're like, no, doesn't really work like this. I'm like, okay, yeah, but it saves me time and gives me an idea of what I need to write, right? So I started, this was my first, with the book designer, Iga, yes, this was the first draft, so we can go through all the slides. So the first draft of Vietnam is so magulo. Next slide, just keep on going. It's just to give you an idea of how the first draft looked like. And when I saw it, I was like, this is really not what I wanted. It was very messy. Oops, go back, sorry. And then this is the second draft. Yeah, this is the second draft, and basically closer to reality. I realized, hey, I don't want it too busy. I still want a bit of pattern. I want white space. I want that negative space. I want it easily read. I want the photos, which are really beautiful, to stand out. So, it was a thought wait, sorry, go back. Yeah. So this next chapter, I said, Mediterranean merienda. So the thing with Vietnam is I had written an article about these Vietnamese recipes. So it was easy for me to just sort of cut and paste that. And we had shot it already, but not knowing it was for the book. We just laid it out. This one, I shot and wrote for the book. So this was the first draft. And then we can go on. Too many photos of me. I'm like, I don't want the book to be about me. I want it to be about the food. Hey, just one photo, but not so many. We can go on. But the look was getting there, right? And then it was only when I did India, which is my favorite chapter, when things went, wow. So this was a chapter that I had used from old material plus added new material specifically shot for the book when I had a clear idea of what I wanted, plus travel photos from a trip I took when I was there, knowing in mind that I was going to use in the book. So each chapter starts with a travel story, which was very important to me. I really wanted to transport people more than just the recipes. And then you have, wait, can we pause there? And then each chapter has the menu. So based on the theme, you have the menu. And next slide. You have service tips like cheat sheets, when to do it, what time in advance, how to prepare. If you don't want to cook this, what can you buy in the supermarket? Setting the mood, so table settings, and then the wine pairings, and then more inspirational photos, and then all the recipes. So finally, I had that structure, from which I proceeded to write, wait, let me pause there, from which I proceeded to write the next couple of chapters, okay? So it's really funny because it's really backwards, yeah? And there, so basically my tips are, you know, you have to slash and edit, work closely with your photographer. I'm very, very close to my photographer. I styled everything myself, I cooked everything myself. We did this, we had a lot of fun, we ate a lot. And with the layout artist, I was there like, move that here, move this here. I spent like hours next to the layout artist because it was like my baby. It really meant a lot to me. And next slide, please. So this was originally in another chapter. I migrated it to the Indian chapter because we had to slash and edit. Next chapter. I needed desserts, so I put the desserts in the resource chapter. So a lot of things, they were like big pieces of a puzzle that kind of fell into place. I was working on it in pockets, editing along the way. So each time I finished a chapter, they would edit it. So Therese Hamargarso of Philstar edited it along with Dolly Zulweta, who did the recipes. And then we would lay it out. And then last, I wrote the introduction. It's funny because you think you'd work backwards, but I worked the other way around. And then finally is the cover. So at first I'm like, I don't want to be on the cover, but no one will buy it if you're not. I'm like, ah. So I had to find something that would convey the message, and ultimately this is like part of the branding. And sadly, I mean, yes, people know me, but people don't know the real me. So people think I'm very glamorous. I'm always like coming out like, that's my mom. That's not me. This was like it was like I had to do my dream covers. I had to be as real to myself as possible. I did my own makeup. I did my own hair. I actually invited friends over for brunch, and we had a lot of fun shooting it. It just kept the wine pouring, and the photographer just kept shooting. So, you know, not only is it authentic, but it means a lot to the book, okay? And that, of course, not everything's perfect, so my friends, next page, they're like, I don't want to be in the cover, actually. Can we just have our hands? We had to edit, we had to Photoshop and find a way to fix it so you have the perfect cover. And there you go. Today I get my baby. Finally the book is born. I can actually drink this tonight and be happy. But so my lessons in food writing competition with the internet, right? Why will people buy my book when they can go online and find all kinds of other amazing recipes with videos and photos? So this book is also quite interesting. There's a digital component as well. So I may not be printing the... It's expensive. It's not going to get to everyone's house, but I'm hoping that through my blog and through my digital platform, I can get that information as well. So there's supplemental recipes that are going to be available online, and you know, some how-tos that will complement the book. So I'm trying to think like a millennial, like trying to be there. I wanted something different. So again, the wine, the photos, I really wanted the photos to be inspiring. And ultimately, for people also who don't cook or who don't want to cook, it's still a beautiful book with stories to read. Each recipe has a story, and each chapter has a story. So I really wanted to have stories to read. And ultimately, it's those stories that you tell beyond the plate and those experiences that go with each moment at the table. And it's very personal. So with that, I just want to end with a little quote from, again, MFK Fisher, which I think kind of sums up all of our writing experiences. It seems to me that our three basic needs for food, security, and love are so mixed and mingled and entwined that we cannot straightly think of one without the others. So it happens that when I write of hunger, I'm really writing about love and the hunger for it, and warmth and the love of it, and the hunger for it, and then the warmth and richness and fine reality of hunger satisfied. It is all one. Please bow.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stephanie, and we thank the three panelists for sharing your insights about how a cookbook is being written and what are the important things that a great cookbook is made of. Now I am opening the floor for our Q&A session. If you have questions, kindly raise your hand and kindly introduce yourself, your name, and your affiliation or where you live. Anyone who would like to ask our panelists? Yes. First.
Hi, I'm Btesh. I'm just one of your fans in your newspaper. You know, that's right. You said, I don't cook, but I like the way how you write your, because that's about the country and the travel. So it's like she opens up a door to a site or country, and then she describes it, and and you make you feel, wow, this is a nice country, and then this is good. I like to taste it. Although my nieces, they cook, pastries and everything. But I like the way how she writes. And mind you, I'm surprised that you're a lot younger in person. Because in your photos, you're older, And that's true, like you said, like when you think about the people who's going to dine, like there was a time when it was my birthday and my friends, they brought Japanese food. But I don't eat Japanese food, Most of them, they're the ones who like it, himaki, I only ate the tonkatsu, but because they're my guests, so I ate it. So that's true, you have to consider the people who you cook food with. Thanks, Nina. So my question is, what was the first food that you cook? Ever since, even when you're young.
Wow.
I mean, that goes for
all of us.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I really would make kulit people in the kitchen, and they would just let me do my thing. And I think the very first dish I ever cooked was a disaster. It was pasta with a sauce that was made of tomato sauce, barbecue sauce, mustard. I put everything I found in the kitchen. I squirted it there. It was grainy because I put all kinds of dried herbs. Now, whenever I found those bottles, I just wanted the act of cooking. Like, I didn't really know yet how to make flavors come together. I just like the act of stirring and putting stuff inside. So yeah, that is the very first dish I ever made, and it wasn't very good.
Just like Stephanie in this book, I dropped a few stories where I learned the recipes or where they come from. And I tell actually what was my first recipe. When I was a kid, I would keep cooking books on my bedside table that I would read at night, like novels. I was not into anything else, not the Marvels or any comics. It was cooking book that I would pull out. And I remember the really first thing I did is a French recipe called œuf cocotte. So it's the most simple. It's a piece of bread that you put in a little ramekin. You put fresh cream, like sour cream, and then you break an egg and you put it in the oven. And then whatever floats your boat to put on top. But just like Stephanie, the first one worked because it was just bread, cream, and egg. So the first one, everybody went like, whoa. So the next one, I started innovating. And then my parents said, if you should lower your innovation because the simple one was the best. And that was a very good lesson because I then learned that don't try to put too much stuff in your recipes. Keep it basic. The more you're going to put flavors and spices, you really have to know your craft work because then it gets really tricky. So me, I always try to stick to like 4 or 5 main flavors, and it gets much more easier. Thank you for your question.
Wow. I was cooking since I could stand up on a stool. And my my very earliest memory was just frying an egg. And, you know, the cook in the house of my grandma was giving me instructions, and I said, no, I want to do it this way. So it turned out like a French fried egg. It's, you have this crusted bottom. I think it was okay. But I was always very observant. I baked my first cake, but I never had lessons. But I was walking through my mom's kitchen. We were delivering cakes to cafeterias. I was walking through my mom's kitchen, and I was walking through it for about 8 years. And each and every time I would see something new, and I'd learn something new. So when I baked a cake, it was okay. Turned out okay.
That's my nemesis. Cake.
Thank you very much. Who would like to ask a question from our panelists?
I was going to ask about, you were saying that really your books are autobiographical. So if you were to write an autobiography, would it be like before you die or something? You know, you never know that.
Yeah, it's now in the works. It's not an autobiography, but it's like true confessions. It's everything, all the mischief, everything that I've done. Because I'm at a point in my life where I really don't care anymore. So I put all the mischief, all the disasters, everything that could have been funny, and I put it there. Suddenly, many of the people who saw my essay said, you need to put recipes. I said, why? This is literary, because you're known for that. So I had to go back and look at each and every chapter and put a recipe that's significant to the chapter. So watch out for it.
Yeah, there's a book that became a movie with Meryl Streep.
Oh yes.
The wife of, she's a writer.
Julia.
No.
Julia.
Becoming Julia.
No. She wrote about her husband who cheated her. He wrote for the Washington Post before. He exposed Nixon, Watergate. And then she wrote a book, and it was really a cookbook, but it was about the divorce. And it was I forgot the name, I'll research it and I'll let you know. But it was a cookbook based on a story, on a autobiography.
So I don't know if I don't know. Well, it's very autobiographical already. But you know, they say when you write an autobiography, you have to say the truth and only the truth, and you have to say everything. So my mom is still alive. So for now, I'm not doing it. I'm writing it. I'm keeping it on the side. But, you know, and I wish that my mom lives the longest possible, so I don't think it's for now. And maybe one day. But I just, about writing a biography, autobiography, I didn't know how to start. And actually, it's an author who gave me the trick. She said, to start, of course, tell the truth, but go back to your oldest memory. Your first memory, the first memory you have in your head of you being a child, a baby or whatsoever, you know, some people can go back to a year and a half, 2 years. She said, find your oldest memory and then start there slowly and it will come, everything will come in the right order. And actually I tried, and that was not a long time ago, and it's true. That's where I went, and I'm working on it, but maybe I will be the only reader. Thank you.
I don't think I ever want to write an autobiography. I think the older I get, I feel like I want to keep my private moments private, especially with my children. Actually, it's been a dilemma for me because even for my column in Star, they bug me like, why don't you write so much anymore? You still travel. I said, but sometimes I want to keep these precious moments private and really treasure them. And that's why this book is so special, because I still write about, I feel like it's more moments that I experienced as opposed to what I did in my life, but moments that I experienced that I feel other people could apply have any relevance to anyone else. Maybe my children. But I feel like I haven't lived that long, I have no real stories to tell, but there are some really amazing moments that I would really like to share. And you know, I may not write as often in the newspaper or even in my blog. I pulled back a little bit because I feel like it's now everything is fast food. You know, people are just putting things on Instagram stories, on this, on that. And I feel like when I do tell about that moment, I want it to be digested. I want it to be really interesting and to ultimately be worth the while of the reader. You know, not just a diary or verbal diarrhea. You know, so for me it's really more, yeah, I don't think I'll ever write about my life. I don't think it's anything interesting. Yeah.
The book, by the way, is Heartburn.
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 Yeah.
You had a question?
I saw
I
somebody.
have a question for Chef G. You mentioned about Cocina Sulipena. I've always been curious about Sulipena, and what does it refer to, a town or a...
Yeah. Sulipan is the town, and the Sulipan is the town, and the cuisine is, of course, in Spanish, is Cocina Sulipena. It was a town that was by the river bank, so a lot of the sugar during the turn of the century that supplied a huge portion of the world because of the Crimean War. That's how Sulipan became very rich. And the foreigners who were on the ships went down and mixed with the town people. So Sulipan is much like New Orleans. The cuisine is very rich. It has lots of influence. It has Spanish, it has Basque, it has French influence. We have words in our language, in our town language, like taburete, which is like tabouret. It's in French. And we try to look at the etymology of how we got all this. We have a dish in Sulipan, Pampanga called pistu.
Yeah. Is that French?
But it's not it's unhealthy. It's not the vegetable type of pistu, but we do have a name for that. So, yeah, it is a town in Pampanga. It's now a haven for carnappers, and you know, where you chop up. You want second-hand parts, you go to my town. But I had to write the book because I knew it was disappearing. You have a pastel. Started out with nice pork sausages, then it became canned Vienna sausage. Now you see hot dogs, red ones, right in the pastel, and it's just degenerating. So I had to just try to preserve the recipes.
All right, thank you very much. We still have time for one more question. Who would like to take the chance to ask our panelists? All right, I have one question though. Is there a certain dish that that seems very challenging for you but you still want to do it? A certain dish that you somehow encountered some difficulties?
I do. Chocolate cake is my nemesis, man. Arch freaking rival. Like, yeah, you know, when I became a mom, I was always a bad baker. But when I became pregnant, actually, with Sebastian, all I did was bake, bake, bake. Because my dream is every time it's their birthday, I want to bake their birthday cake. Like, this is something I wanted to do because I never had that as a kid. You know, red ribbon, Goldilocks. I wanted to bake my child's birthday cake, and I actually have the one cake recipe I perfected in the book. I can do other desserts. I can do mousse. I can do crumble. But chocolate cake always looks like a big pile of poop for me, and it tastes like a big pile of poop. Like, it just, I don't know why. It's either too dry or too wet, or the icing is not right, or it's too sweet. And yeah, I have yet, I have yet to perfect it. It's never, I've almost given, not quite yet, but I was discouraged, very discouraged.
Well, when you work in restaurant, every single dish is a challenge actually, because you don't want to see the plate coming back full. And when I do private dinners now, I'm just waiting to see and empty is going to come back to plate. So it's always challenging. We sometimes hear in the industry, oh, watch out, table 6 is VIP. No, there's not such a thing as a VIP table. I mean, table 6 maybe is a celebrity, but is paying the same price on the then table 12 that is. So there is no such a thing. Every table is VIP. So it's always a challenge, and if you cook for people you love, and your family and your friends, it's still a challenge. So I'm never confident. I'm always like, because I notice when I'm too confident, I'm saying, oh, I'll do this in 2 seconds. I screw. Other than this, I'm just like Stephanie. I'm the worst baker. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So I have like 5, 6, fetish recipes that I know can work. And I'm really on my toes when I do them, because I'm like, okay, it works, but you never know. But I'm a terrible baker, so when it comes to, that's why in this book there's not so many desserts, because when it comes to baking, which is so precise, such a chemistry, where 2 grams of this or 3 grams of that, or 2 degrees can change the entire thing. I'm like sticking to very simple, like mousse, because I can do it by hand.
When I bake,
Tarte tatin, because tarte tatin is super easy. You have 3 steps and it's done. But other than this, baking is like.
Because we're passionate, creative people.
Yeah, there's
too much science.
We come from the literature, right? We come from the science. We did the same studies. Words, not numbers.
Words, not numbers. Chef Jean?
To me, the most challenging dishes would be those that would need some, how would you call it, a holistic approach, like historical dishes. I'm working now on I worked on the Malolos Congress menu. This was years ago, in celebration of our centennial. And I shared it, it was done by other chefs, but the main place was in Cafe Isabel, where we recreated the Malolos Congress menu, and in my grandmother's house, where I had some of the china. And I thought that it was dinner. I found out it was lunch. So now, there's a new Malolos Congress menu, and they were able to find it in Cagayan, the only one copy. And I worked with Ambet Ocampo on this. And it took a long, it took a long thing, like just to say sherry. It says Jerez. What kind of sherry was served on the table then?
Historical accuracy.
You can't serve a manzanilla or a lighter fino, because these are things that would go and travel. So we had to think about what they were. Everything had to be laid and had to have some historical analysis. So yeah, that was challenging. And we're going to serve that on the 120th.
Wow.
The 120th anniversary of the Philippine Republic.
All right, thank you very much. We would like to extend our gratitude to our 3 panelists for today. Let's give them a round of applause. So thank you for the shared insights, answers to the queries. And I would like to give you time to promote your books. Let's start with...
Buy naman my book. I want to make
Is Cocina Sulipena still in print?
Yes, it's on its second. The old one is a blue cover, Now it's a turquoise cover, which brings the first one was a mistake, and now it's a real the turquoise cover. By the way, I hope National carries it because it's printed by him. But it's a turquoise cover now, and I added one extra chapter. I added barrio cooking, so not from elitist down to barrio cooking.
Well, just like you, with Anvil, I really work on the price, so it's less than 600 pesos because I want it to be affordable, and you can cook from scratch. French food, Italian, Mediterranean, even if you're not a chef. And there's a specificity that I had to fight with this lady, but now we love it, right? All my recipes are for one. The measurement is per spoon, cups, mugs, for one person. Because I thought, you know, sometimes you're just one or two. And if you're two, you multiply by 2, by 3, by 4, by 12. You know, rather than divide like, okay, this is 200 grams for 6, but we're only 5. Okay, so yeah, so it's very basic to use, very easy, and go for it. I cannot buy a BMW. I'll buy a dinky toy, and I'll give it to your son.
Oh my gosh, okay, I'm so ashamed. I wish this were cheaper, but I promise you it's worth every bit. It's
Yeah, but how many pages?
It's $895. It's really it's full color. It's got really nice photos. This is done by my niece. I'm so proud of her. We've got some travel photos.
Who's your food photographer?
My food photographer is actually not a food photographer. You ask them, you know. So there. I mean, I tried to make it fun. You know, make you travel, but also useful. So yeah, please.
Hindi ko na, yung Anvil kasi hindi ko na-promote. Okay. This is the Philippine breads. It's all recipes. There's an award-winning panaderia book that came out the year before. I was consulted a little on that, and I brought out Philippine breads, which I was working on. We had to document this because again, a lot of the recipes are getting lost. It won, the little Chippy Pie book won World Gourmand Awards. And this is, have you ever had nangka marshmallows? Have you ever had sapin-sapin macarons? This is the book. It's Modern Philippine Confections. I'm hoping that it will give inspiration to our pasalubong counter people who are how would you call it, fixated on yema, pastillas, pulboro, all that. And lastly, it's not here. My school tested the book. It's circa 1960s. A friend of mine gave me the book and said, "This is my father's book. Where's your father? He's dead." I couldn't sleep for 2 days because I went through the whole book, 400 recipes of. This is a 1960s book. It had focaccia. It had Jewish challah. It's a very sophisticated baking book, and we tested all the recipes. I did not touch the recipes. I just made my recommendations on the side, and it's out. It's by Efren Bunkin, and it was tested in our school. All 400 recipes.
The title of the book anyway is Breads, Cakes, Pastries, and More from the Golden Treasury of Baking and Candy Making by Efren G. Bonkin. The annotations were made by Chef Jean Gonzales, and all were kitchen tested by the Center for Asian Culinary Studies, the school that Chef Jean is leading. So, all right, thank you very much to our guests. Thank you for joining us in this panel. And again, we thank our panelists for sharing your knowledge to our guests for today. We hope you have a nice afternoon. I hope you also attend our other sessions. And for those who would like to have books signed by our panelists, you can line it up here in the aisle. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Yeah.